What's up, everyone? I'm Chris,
I'm Anthony.
and we are the Super,
Super
Sports,
Sports
Bros.
Bros.
So, we are joined here by Pikachu and Samus this time. Last week was DK and Link.
It's good to change it
But, nice change up once in a while. So, we're going to talk about some hot sports topics, whether it be New York sports, all around sports this week. With the Super Bowl coming up, obviously, we're going to talk about some Super Bowl predictions and some news about the Super Bowl and stuff like that. But, let's get things started with some New York sports. The Knicks. Three-game win streak last week. 3 out of their last 4 games they won.
Almost won the fourth one.
Almost won the fourth one, but they kind of blew it in the end. What do you make of that? Do you think it's, do you think it's a spark for the team, or does it kind of just be like, oh, it's just a fluke. They won 3 games in a row, showed a little bit of heart for a week. What do you think?
I think it's exactly what you said at the end there. They showed heart for a week. And obviously there's no one on this roster that is going to give them any type of consistent winning this season, at least in my eyes right now. But I just think that it's nice to see heart and hustle and really a lot of guys that are fighting for jobs, and they're running the triangle.
Exactly.
They're actually running it in a way that looks fluid. And that's nice to see.
And do you look at the guys running the triangle? It's not, the Melo, Stoudemire.
Melo didn't even play last game.
Melo didn't play last game. You got guys like Galloway stepping up, who actually was signed throughout the rest of the season, which I think is a great idea. He was probably the biggest bright spot in that little win streak. He's a D-leaguer. He signed 10-day contract, I think like 2 or 3 10-day contracts, something like that. And then he signed the full-year deal. And I think that's a great move by the Knicks because, hey, we know we're probably out of it this year. We're going to look at these young guys that are actually providing some sort of substance to the team. They provide something. They bring something to the table that worked for 3 games in a row.
Right. To me, it's just a matter of excitement, even if it doesn't work. Fans, New York fans in particular, like Langston Galloway. I love the guy. And Lance Thomas is another example of a guy that is fighting for a dream. And New Yorkers love that. They eat it up. And in my opinion, no matter what happens, that's something to watch.
Yeah.
And before, I didn't even consider them worth watching. And now the fact that they're actually starting to show signs of coming together as a team. Whether they win or lose, they're together.
Yeah.
And that's something we hadn't seen until these last few games, and I hope that it can continue.
Yeah. I mean, will they win a couple more games throughout the stretch? Most likely they'll win a couple more. I'm not predicting them to go on some sort of ridiculous win streak.
No.
Galloway is, in my eyes, very reminiscent of Starks back, when Starks was playing, signing those 10-day contracts until he became a great Knick, that a lot of people remember.
Exactly. Those stories are always exciting. To me, in my younger days, those were always the fun teams, back when centers were actually valuable and scorers and just different era of basketball in the 90s. But in the past, 10, 12 years or so, my favorite Knicks memory is Jeremy Lin's rise to stardom at the Garden. And they didn't even win a playoff series that year. In fact, they got destroyed. Lin got hurt. So the end result wasn't amazing. But those 2.5 weeks or month span, whatever you want to call it, was really something to remember and remains one of my favorite sports stories ever.
Yeah.
Period.
He was, back to Jeremy Lin, he was someone who was sleeping on someone's couch.
Exactly.
And now he's making these, getting these big contracts. He had one with Houston. Now he's over in L.A.
He made it.
He made it. And, good for him. Will that be kind of the same thing as Galloway? Will he just, be with the Knicks for now and then they trade him away or, lose him to a big contract because he plays well? Or
we don't know how good he is yet. That's why I love the idea of only signing for the remainder of the season. He's being tested. Jeremy Lin was in an awkward situation because he did so well that it was that he was going to get a large one, somewhere else if the Knicks didn't re-sign him. So it got really awkward, and no one really understood how much of a spotlight he deserved. Or it's a very binary issue about people's opinions on Jeremy Lin, and so far he's shown that he's a pretty average player.
Yeah, so he wasn't worth the big money that the Rockets shelled out for him, in my opinion.
No.
But for that 2-month span that he was with the Knicks, it was some great basketball to be watching.
Right.
Anyway, moving on to some more New York news, New York sports. Last night we had another Islanders-Rangers blowout. The last time these teams met, it was like a 4-0.
It was 3-0.
3-0 shutout, and this time it was 4-1, and the Rangers only scored in the last 8 seconds.
Exactly.
So it was pretty much almost a 4-0 shutout this week until they just let up a goal in the end. Now, I know you and me were talking about it before. We both enjoyed the games. We both like watching the Islanders and watching them do well this year. What is your take on this? Do you think this is something that down the road, if they meet each other in the playoffs, this is going to be exactly how it's going to be? The Islanders blow them out every single game, or is it going to be a little more hard fought and closer?
I think that it'll be more hard fought and closer. And even though the Islanders have won handily the last 2 times they played the Rangers had some good shots. Halak played really well. It was more even than the score showed, in my opinion. But right now, the Islanders are one of the best teams in the regular season so far in the NHL. I think I'm not sure who won or lost last night, but right now they are very close to being one of the best, if not the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they lead the Metropolitan Division. Yeah. They're 10-0 in the division, which is amazing. But I think that if they were to play in the playoffs, the Rangers obviously have more playoff experience. The Islanders have some more veteran, Johnny Boychuk in particular, an experienced defender that can hopefully lead them when they're there. But they also have some really young scorers that are not that as experienced in the big game, so I think it would be a closer series, and I'm hopeful the Islanders can win, but I think it'd be great hockey, and I think it'd be worth watching for everyone.
I mean, when I look at the Rangers, I see a team that tends to show up when it's most necessary.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, they were in the playoffs. They made some nice runs each year. Last year, they made it to the Stanley Cup. Granted, they did lose. They did still put up a great fight against the Kings, if you ask me.
Agreed.
So they're one of those teams that you can never really count them out. I do think the Islanders are a better team this year. However, when it comes to postseason, the Rangers are one of those teams that kind of turn it up in the postseason regardless of who they're playing.
Right, and I think what makes the Islanders a favorable matchup against the Rangers is just their speed. And because the Rangers are a gritty, good goaltending, good defense, win a game 2-1 type of team, which is something New Yorkers can respond to as well, the Islanders are just so flashy and it can score 2-3 goals in a second, and it just feels like they're very different atmospheric teams, and when they verse each other, it makes for a great game.
Yeah. All right, so if that is to be a playoff matchup, which I'm really hoping it is, because it would definitely be something great to watch, I'm really looking forward to it. Anyway, moving on from regular season to and teams doing well to special players doing well. This weekend we had the NFL Pro Bowl, the NHL All-Star Game. Everyone watches those, right?
Yeah, well, for us personally, we watched the opening drive and deemed it unworthy watching in the Pro Bowl. And I didn't get to watch the NHL All-Star Game, but I saw that John Tavares had 4 goals.
He had 4 goals. And
there, the main stat, though, for that game is 0 hits recorded in the entire game. Not one.
Yeah, and you look at these games, and they say it's to celebrate the game, but how are you celebrating a game if you're not playing the game how it's supposed to be played?
Sidney Crosby doesn't go.
Yeah.
Sidney Crosby says, why should I, in a way, are you really commemorating an individual's efforts by taking away their day off?
Yeah, exactly.
I think they've earned the day off. And I don't think you're doing goalie. I mean, fortunately, Halak looked fine, but I don't think you're doing goalies any favors when they play in a game and they let up 5-6 goals. Even if it is just for fun and they're not really taking it seriously. Goalies are very, mentally sound athletes, and you don't want to mess up their psyche in any way. So I just don't think it's good for the teams and doesn't benefit them in any way.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the All-Star game in the NHL, the score was like 15-11.
Yeah.
Do you ever see anyone score 15 goals in an NHL game? It's you look at these games and you say, what is the point of them? Especially the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is the one that really pisses me off because it's the only one out of all the major sports that takes place after the season, but it's not even after the Super Bowl. You got all these players, and arguably some of the best players tend to be on the Super Bowl teams. Those players can't even be in the Pro Bowl because they still have to play the Super Bowl.
Right.
So if you're going to have this Pro Bowl to celebrate the game, then have it after the Super Bowl or something like that, where all those players that deserve to be there, you have the Richard Shermans, you have the Darrell Reeveses, who are arguably two of the, well, not arguably, undoubtedly the best 2 corners in the game.
Exactly.
Completely absent from the game. And you have players like Tom Brady, who puts on an amazing performance, as well as Marshawn Lynch, who always tends to put up.
Of course. They're all probably Pro Bowl. They all probably should be Pro Bowlers.
They all were Pro Bowlers. They got voted to
They
the
got
game.
them. Yeah.
They got to the game, but they weren't allowed to play because it was the week before the Super Bowl. They used to have it in Hawaii as almost like, a vacation thing for the players. Like, great season. Here you go. Here's a trip to Hawaii where you get to play some football for fun. And I think that method worked better, in my opinion, in the view of what the game was. But now it's just, they have the fantasy football live draft. They're just making it to so much more of a media event, with airing the draft. Like, who cares?
Right.
And they do these things, and they claim they're celebrating the game, but I think it's really just something that it's pointless.
I agree, and I think that the biggest problem in all of it, even though I'm totally against them existing, is fan voting. And I mean, think about this. The only reason Odell Beckham went to the Pro Bowl was because Calvin Johnson decided not to play, and then he was selected 4th overall by Michael Irving. That says a lot about how fans shouldn't really determine who had the best All-Star season. I mean, I felt that Eli Manning was qualified to play in a Pro Bowl.
He had one of his best statistical seasons,
and
as
I felt that,
last week.
And I felt that Andy Dalton was not qualified to play in the Pro Bowl.
Was Andy Dalton in the Pro Bowl?
He was selected. Yeah,
that is.
Yeah,
he had one of his worst seasons. He just looked terrible this year.
I think he had 19 touchdowns and 17 interceptions.
And how many did Eli have? He had 26, something like that.
Eli had more than that. He had 31. Yeah. He had 31, and I think 14 interceptions.
Yeah,
his numbers are very on par with Matthew Stafford's, who was in the Pro Bowl as well.
Yeah, and you look at these, and it always tends to be what teams are doing better that have more players going. You have teams like the Broncos, who, don't get me wrong, they're a great team. They have some of the most selections because their team is doing well, so they're always in the spotlight. You have teams like the Giants where they went 6-10 this year.
Exactly.
They went 6-10, and who did you see from the Giants there? Odell Beckham Jr. because he was an alternate.
Right.
And did they have anyone that was originally elected to the Pro Bowl?
Not to my knowledge.
Exactly. And, they have players that shine throughout the season, not just like Eli, like Odell. And what exactly comes from individual performance? Nothing really. Because it's always seen as what teams are doing better. Oh, those players must be doing better, so I'm just going to pick these players because their teams are doing well. You have, of course, Calvin Johnson, whether the Lions are doing well or not, he's a household name. Everyone knows who Calvin Johnson is. He's probably going to get elected whether the Lions are 1-15 or 11-5.
Right. You're shading to a point that it's all about media exposure when it comes to fans. It's all about recognizing the face. There are a lot of great football players that aren't that well known because sometimes they prefer it. They don't do a lot of public appearances. And others, like, I guess you could say Richard Sherman is a good example, who welcome the spotlight and enjoy the attention.
Yeah.
And so I think that the biggest problem is fan voting, and the fact that there are rule changes to the game. They shouldn't even have a game.
There's no blitzing.
They shouldn't even have a game. But also, if they do need to do something, if the NFL really needs their money, which they do.
They don't need any money. They just want.
In their eyes, they do. They need maybe a skills competition.
Yeah.
It would be something entertaining, it'd be something to watch. You could have fun with the GoPros and the cameras, which I had more fun watching the GoPro practices, because they did some cool things with that, than I did watching any of the game.
Yeah, and I look at these like the NBA All-Star Game. My favorite part of the NBA All-Star Game is the dunk contest, the slam dunk contest. You have the NHL All-Star Game. They have like the trick shot contest and stuff like that. Have stuff like that where you say, oh, who can catch like 3 balls thrown at the same time, like something like that, where they just do some cool stuff. There's almost like a postseason, almost like a combine, but just a showcase of these athletes and what they can do, and not just say, oh, how well can they throw a lollipop to a player down the field because no one's really covering or trying to hit them.
Exactly. And some people think the solution is like how baseball went with it, and they made it meaningful. And I think that is even worse. To say that a midsummer classic where everyone's tentative, no one wants to get hurt, make that determine who has home field advantage in the World Series. In my opinion, that's absolutely insane. I think that high school has it right. You win all state, you win all county, you get commemorated for your individual efforts, but there's no gain. You don't have to risk injury. It'd be even crazier in high school because they're looking to get into college. But it's no different than any other athlete at any other point in their career. There's no reason to risk an injury over a game that doesn't matter. Yeah, and maybe there are some fun sides to it, but personally I'm just very against it.
And you look at like the college level, the only, I think, like all-star game you really see is like the bowl for anyone who's looking to maybe go into the draft or something like that to kind of showcase themselves as like the senior game or something like that. And it's all seniors. So it's not even like it's just everyone's going. Anyway, I know you're talking about the whole, embracing the media and not embracing the media.
Right.
That's a perfect segue to what I wanted to talk
agree.
to next. Media day for the Super Bowl was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There were some nice little sound bits. I know I had some laughs watching Gronk talking because apparently there's an erotic novel about Gronk that someone wrote.
Interesting.
And they had Gronk read a line from it, and I was damn near pissing myself.
I should probably watch that. I haven't seen it.
That was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really want to talk about is players like Marshawn Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you and me have very different opinions on this
Right.
topic, and we do a lot of agreeing. As you were talking about earlier, we do a lot of agreeing when we do these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that we are opposite ends.
Mm-hmm.
So Marshawn Lynch, he's someone who doesn't like talking to the media. They make him talk to the media, and by result, he just gives one-worded or sarcastic answers.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, his answer to every question was, "I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Right.
I'm here so I won't get fined. I'm here so I won't get fined."
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've ever seen him actually answer questions or give an interview was on his E60. That was all about him, as well as I think Deion Sanders actually got an interview with him once. So what is your take on, should he, shouldn't he, should the NFL change their rules as to what the media policy is? What is your take on that for everyone who's watching?
Well, I obviously think that the media day of the Super Bowl is an absolute circus-like atmosphere, and the fact that you told me that there was actually a story that Tom Brady has a cold, and and the fact that people are just so desperate for any sort of gossip. It's all speculative. None of it's factual. It's just a matter of pulling information out of a helpless individual, which arguably one of the most helpless would be Marshawn Lynch, because he feels that whenever he talks to the media, his words get twisted around. And I would like to point out that you said Marshawn Lynch doesn't like talking to the media. Most people don't. Most people don't like talking to the media, but it's a responsibility that these players agree to when they joined the NFL. They're under contract to do so. You could say he's practicing his freedom and his rights. His freedom and his rights are outside of the NFL. If he agrees to do this, then he has to do it. And I think that these answers are just ridiculous. But no one cares because they're getting tons of YouTube hits. They're getting stories. They're getting attention. So this is probably the ultimate compromise in this ridiculous problem that consists of Marshawn Lynch wanting to talk to the media or not.
Yeah, I mean, I read a few things online, and I don't think how I look at it this way is the NFL's policy is you must be available to the media following a game or anything like that.
Right. And it's like 20 minutes, I think is what the policy is.
There's no definition of what available to the media is. Available to media just for them to look at you, to like film you on camera, or to answer questions. And I look at it as if a player doesn't want to talk, they shouldn't have to talk. The NFL should look at this rule and say, oh, just because we say they have to be available doesn't mean, maybe they're in the background or something like, oh, here's Marshawn Lynch. He had like 250 rushing yards or something like that. Have the media in the locker room where they can kind of show players and, after the game, stuff like that. But after like an embarrassing loss or something, do you really want to be talking to them? Absolutely not. You don't want a camera in your face. Yeah. You don't want to be answering questions. And he has said in his E6, he said, he got drafted to play football and he just wants to play football. He doesn't play football for, the big, headlines and stuff like. He plays to play the game. And I respect that a lot. And he said to someone once, if we're rolling, we're talking, we're rolling. And he said he doesn't trust a lot of people. He has huge trust issues when it comes to people, especially when it comes to using his words. He said, he put it this way. He's from Oakland. Oakland's not the greatest area, as we know. And he said, he's seen friends turn on friends, family turn on family. He's like, these media are people I don't know. If I seen people like this turn on each other, what are they going to do to me? Like, how are they going to turn on me? That's why he gives these answers. And he says, I don't want to talk to them because I don't do it to get noticed. I do it to play the game.
Right.
Like, that's literally what he's like, I play football to play football. I don't play football to talk to someone after the game. It's like, I play the game, I go home, I live my life. That's how he wants to be. And I respect that. And I think that the NFL should look at their media policy and say, if a player wants to talk to the media, they'll talk to the media. Like players like Russell Wilson, I feel like actually like talking to the media. He always kind of has his little inspiration thing. He talks about his dad sometimes because dad has huge influence on him. And people like Richard Sherman, they love the spotlight. They love talking.
Sure.
And you had guys like Bart Scott when he was playing. He loved talking to the media.
Sure.
You got guys like Bill Belichick. He hates talking to the media. We all know Bill Belichick hates talking to the media. But there's going to be guys in every team that like it and don't like it. I know you said no one likes talking, but some people do like talking. Some people do like the recognition, like Richard Sherman. And I think that the NFL should revise their policy and say, if someone doesn't want to talk, they don't have to talk.
Well, let me let me say this in a different way. I have no problem with Marshawn Lynch's reasons for not wanting to talk to the media. I think they're valid, and I don't expect a player to even want to talk to the media. I just think that it requires a little more perspective than just that simple conversation, because the media companies that do the broadcasting, that make you famous, that make the reason you played football is to ultimately what? Make money and to play and do it as a living. You may love, if you really love football and don't want to do it about the money, join the CFL. Join the Arena Football League. I'm serious. If you want to be in the NFL, which obviously Marshawn Lynch made a conscious decision to do so, these are the policies. Now, do I agree with all of them? No. But if he gets fined for breaking a rule that he knows he's breaking, how should I even feel bad for him? Is it really that hard to say nothing in an interview? Have you ever watched an interview with Eli Manning or Peyton Manning or an established pro where they just say nothing? And it's almost skillful in a way where they don't lead on anyway, they don't come across as overconfident, they answer the questions directly and obviously say things like, oh yes, we want to win, we're a team, blah, 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 and then you're on your way. It's the same interview you've heard 1,000 times. Now, do I enjoy watching those? No, I think they're boring and pointless. But if you have an obligation as an individual to a contract that you chose to agree with, you have to go through with the procedures. And I guess if this is his compromise, that's fine. But if people are going to make a big deal about it, like, oh, Marshawn Lynch shouldn't have talked to me if he doesn't want to do this, I just don't agree with it, because this guy is making millions to play football, and the reason he has millions is because people want to see him, want to listen to him, and he should respect the fans that give him the money in the first place. And a lot of fans want to watch him and want to hear what he has to say. What is the first thing you wanted to hear when Bill Belichick was in trouble with the Deflategate, even though I don't feel like talking about it? But I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wanted to hear his explanation. And if there was a rule where he didn't have to talk to the media, it wouldn't be good. Like, I think, like, in certain instances you should have to talk to the media. Do I think there are obvious problems? Absolutely. I think it's terrible when they go in the locker room and they're in the middle of changing and they're talking. The guy's got no shirt. And I was like, what is the point of this? Like, why can't you let him go to the media room? You have a designated room.
Because they want to be the first ones to get the reactions. They want to be the first ones to get the answers.
So they got men and women, tons of people. People are changing, microphones everywhere. That's a terrible rule. I would be uncomfortable if I was an individual in a locker room and people were trying to talk to me as I was getting dressed. I think most people on this planet would. So, do I agree with the NFL's media policy? No. But do I think that Marshawn Lynch is being unfairly treated because he doesn't want to talk? No, not at all. I think he's being treated just like every other player in the NFL. And if he wants to make money, which he is, he should either pay the fines, which in the past he did, or just accept it. And,
I mean, you say like he agrees to do it and everything like that, but the media policy was just modified when the last CBA was signed. That was where this whole thing came from. So he was in the NFL before that was even a rule where you had to talk to the media or had to make yourself available to the media. So it's not like he joined the NFL and then he knew that going in. It was one of those things where it happened in the middle of his career and he's like, I'm not going to leave now. And, I really think they need to take a step back and rethink their policy. If it's my idea for a good policy would be each team designates like 2 players a game, like have like a rotating schedule where they go to the media room and those 2 players are the players that speak after that game. Every single week. Like, say like the Seahawks play this week, they play next week, have Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman this week and have like Cam Chancellor and, Doug Baldwin next week or something like that. Or,
Let me ask you something though. Does it bother you when stories are just kind of created when they don't exist?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There would be more of those with that policy because there would be less information for reporters to work with. There are tons of people in the media. They would have to dig stuff up. They would have to arguably even make stuff up just to fill that void so they could make a living.
Yeah, and I mean,
if the NFL gives back to the people that help make them famous, like in this case the players, they should. That's my opinion, especially for the field that we're in. As people that did communications, and I have a problem with unjust journalism a lot of the time, and it's an ongoing problem. And I have a problem with pestering an individual, like happens a lot of the time with NFL players. 20 minutes after every game, which I might be more or less. I feel like that would be a fair policy.
And they really need to rethink the way they do it. So this way, there aren't fines being given out because someone gives one word answers or doesn't want to talk. If someone's uncomfortable talking, they shouldn't have to talk.
Well, he hasn't been fined for the one word answers, right?
No.
So he's got it. He's got his unique compromise, and he's going to get his money, and everything's fine.
Although apparently he might get fined for yesterday's interview because he had a hat on that was.
See, this is ridiculous. I understand these I understand these policies in the NFL are absurd.
Because the hat was like kind of promoting his own brand, the Beast Mode brand, on a hat, and that's not sanctioned by the NFL. The NFL doesn't say, "Oh, this is allowed," or
they've come down hard on that this year. A lot of guys have Dre Beats, and they can't even wear those when they warm up.
And a few years ago, when the Bears were in the Super Bowl, Brian Urlacher wore a vitamin water hat, and that wasn't allowed, so he got fined for that.
Yeah,
so. Even though Marshawn Lynch talked yesterday so he wouldn't get fined, he's still going to get fined for something.
Yeah,
and it's ridiculous. Anyway, I know we talked a lot about the media and the Super Bowl, but let's talk about the game itself. We have some injuries. We have Tom Brady with a cold. What's your take on, these injuries, especially Richard Sherman? He was unable to move his arm through the second half of last week's game.
His injury is severe, but he has a sprain. And I think that 2 weeks' time with a sprain, you're going to get more out of him than obviously what we saw during the Green Bay game. Aaron Rodgers had a bad calf, and he did acupunctures, and he walked a lot better the next game, and that was within 1 week. So I think 2 weeks, he should be ready to go. Yeah. He's going to play. They're saying, he's quote-unquote going to be limited. I don't buy it. I think it's all games.
Richard Sherman's playing every single down.
It's all games and the idea of getting a mental edge and just possibly confusing the opponent, in which case no one's going to bite on that. But if there is a king of trying to confuse the other opponent, it's Bill Belichick. You don't know how he's going to come out. You would expect the Patriots, this passing team, to challenge the strengths of the Seattle and the defensive backs. But why wouldn't they run the ball? After coming off such a strong...
Oh, trust me, they're going to be running the ball.
After coming after such a strong showing against Indianapolis, the question I want to ask that no one seems to be talking about is, do you think the Seattle Seahawks can stop New England Patriots' run game?
I think that they've shown in games that they can stop the run to an extent. I know Eddie Lacy had a pretty decent game last week.
Right.
LeGarrette Blount's coming off a huge game against Indianapolis. And who even knows if LeGarrette Blount's going to be the starting running back this week? Because I don't think they've had a consecutive starting running back since week 3 this year. And granted, LeGarrette Blount definitely deserves, the credit he's getting, to be able. But I mean,
he'll get carries.
You got to look at it this way: Indianapolis' run defense was abysmal. And I mean, Seattle's got a strong defense, so I don't think LeGarrette Blount's gonna have as good of a game as he had last week.
Right.
But there is a chance of him having a decent game and kind of adding that extra element to the offense. You have Brady throwing, and you can never count out Tom Brady. He's great at dissecting defenses. We all know that. He wouldn't have been in the league this long as a starting quarterback if he couldn't.
Right. But with classic Belichick logic is earlier this year, Jonas Gray had, I think, 4 touchdowns against Indianapolis.
4 touchdown game and
fantastic
350 yards.
Yes.
He was half of the Patriots rushing offense this year.
Roughly, yes.
In one game.
So the guy had a really good game. And what did he do next week?
He showed up late to a meeting and Bill Belichick
forget Jones. That's true. But what was the game plan of the Patriots the following week? They came up 5 wide. So all week the opponent's preparing to stop the run. And then they're caught on their heels because they have this quick nickel and dime passing game that they're not expecting. So the Seahawks probably have no idea what they're doing, but I don't think the Seahawks are even that much of a creative defense anyway.
No, they're not worried.
They're not. No, they don't do anything that no one doesn't understand. So this is going to be more about execution than a scheme. And in my opinion, I think that the New England Patriots are going to be able to move the ball well. But if the Seattle Seahawks can get to Brady early, it's going to play out as a very different game.
Yeah, I think the first quarter is going to tell a lot. I mean, granted, we can't really say that it's going to dictate anything because we look at the Green Bay versus Seattle game last week, and what happened. Seattle came back in the fourth quarter and just put on an amazing show. But it's kind of hard for me to pick a team when it's such an even match, in my opinion. I think this is one of the best possible matchups to have. Granted, I know last week you said, 2-1s, and I hate both teams. It's a terrible matchup. But statistically and game-wise, I think it's a great matchup.
I think so, too.
And, they both the Patriots, in my opinion, are the most well-rounded team this year. You know, they definitely bolstered that defense by adding the two corners between Revis and why am I forgetting the other guy's name?
Sherman?
No, no, the Patriots.
Oh,
Revis and why can't I remember his name?
I don't know.
He was on the Seahawks last year. The other corner.
It's not important. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, you know, they added two great corners, and their defense is, and with Vince Wilfork in the middle of the line, you know, they got decent linebackers. They're definitely a well-rounded team, and, you know, they have the running game that's been emerging recently, and the passing game with Tom Brady at the helm. You know, you have that team, the ideal football team, in my opinion. You have the ideal football team, the Patriots, even though I hate saying that. You know, look at me, I'm a Jets fan. I hate admitting the Patriots are a great team, even though they are.
So what's your pick, Mr. Man?
It's so hard for me to pick. You know, I talked about the Patriots at first, but I want to talk about Seattle too. You know, they have that drive. They just always tend to have this drive against really good teams. You know, you see them. You know, the statistic is that they're 9-0, 10-0 now against Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. You know, take that as you will between, you know, beating Aaron Rodgers and, you know, beating who else did they play this year that they beat? You know, and beating Peyton Manning earlier this year too. You know, you have a team that definitely knows how to beat good teams. They do, and they have great formulas of winning, and just they do a lot of things right. You know, I think they have a great coaching staff. You know, Pete Carroll is definitely an emotional guy. He definitely gets a lot of guys into the game. Russell Wilson is a huge piece of that. You know, he's not the best quarterback per se. He's a great playmaker and great at, you know, making something out of nothing. You have Marshawn Lynch, who is good for, you know, a couple big runs every game. I know he's definitely proven that. And even when Marshawn Lynch isn't in, you have Robert Turbin and Christine Michael, who have also proven themselves as very good running backs.
Well.
They block well. They run well.
The offensive line
has been blocking well.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and, you know, Marshawn Lynch probably won't be back with Seattle next year. That is a really good possibility because, as they've shown last few weeks, they like running with the other two also, and the other two have proven themselves that they can run
cheaper options as
well. And, you know, Marshawn Lynch is going to be a huge contract this year. But I know that everyone says, oh, you know, no one's repeated since the Patriots, but Seattle Seahawks are going to repeat as Super Bowl champions.
That's your pick?
I said it at the beginning of the season. I said it that
really,
if any team can repeat as Super Bowl champions, it was going to be the Seahawks. I said it to you. I know I did.
I don't doubt it.
I have not backed down from that idea. Seattle's going to win. It's going to be a great game, very close. I'm saying it's going to be like 24-21 final. There's going to be a field goal that separates it.
24-21 is your final?
Seahawks.
I think that since it's hard to give a team a matchup edge since they match up so well, you have to look to the mental edge. And if there's a team that is more pissed off than any other team, it's New England right now. They're looking like fools. Bill Belichick's coming off as a narcissistic liar. They want this win so badly that I think they want it more than any other Super Bowl that they've been to. This is their 6th appearance, their historic duo. I got to go with the quarterback and the coach. I'm going to New England Patriots. I think it's 28-24 final. I think Brady will get hit, so I think that's what will keep it close. But I think New England's going to get their points, and they'll be able to keep Seattle on their heels if they can get the running game going early, which I think is what they're going to look to do.
Yeah, and as I said, it's very tough for me to pick. You know, I pick Seattle mainly because I want to see them repeat because I do like Seattle. You know, and I mentioned my reasons for, you know, saying that a great team. And if anything that they've done, you know, last week in that comeback win, you know, if they could play the way they did in the fourth quarter last week through the whole game, there's no doubt that they're going to win it.
I thought that Green Bay gift wrapped it to them, and I think New England's a better team.
Yeah,
that's what I've been telling myself.
And if Russell Wilson doesn't play like crap in the first 3 quarters and throw 4 interceptions,
and if there's a team that probably has the best coverage in the NFL, it might be New England. I mean, Seattle obviously on the other side, but if there's a coverage team that's going to give Russell Wilson a challenge, it's New England. Yeah,
and since 2012, these two teams have the best turnover ratio. They're tied at 51 turnover ratio in the NFL since 2012. Do you know what the third ranked team is?
Tell me.
San Francisco 49ers plus 28. So there's like almost a 30-point difference right there.
Right.
And as I said, this is a great matchup. I'm picking Seattle.
I'm picking New
England.
Real quick, who are your favorite? If you had to pick a favorite individual of both teams, what players do you like the most on each team before we call it a week?
Gronk on the Patriots.
On New
I love Gronk. And I'm going to have to go Russell Wilson. I do really like Russell Wilson. I think he's a great player, great person also. He's been he's nominated for Man of the Year award, stuff like that. And I see the kind of charity work that he does, and I really like what I see from him.
Personally, my favorite Seahawk is Cam Chancellor. No one talks about him. He lays the wood every single week. He's a big hitter, and he's a huge part to that secondary success. And on the Patriots, I love Vince Wilfork. He's remarkably durable for someone of his enormous size.
He is huge.
He's a great personality. He saved a person's life following the game, and no one cares. Everyone just wants to talk about deflated footballs. He pulled a woman out of a car.
Yeah. It was flipped over.
For that, maybe that alone is why Vince Wilfork is my favorite guy. But those are the two guys I'll be rooting for on Super Bowl Sunday.
All right, cool. So, and then watching, comment below what you thought of anything we talked about, and who are your picks for Super Bowl and the scores, and who are your favorite players on each team. I love Gronk because he bounced back very well this year, and he's also, I just love seeing his off the field antics.
He's a bro.
He's a bro. He's hysterical. Comment below, and until next time, we are the Super Sports Bros. Join us next week for episode 3.